everybody and welcome back. As always, my name is Addie and this is the Knits by AJ Knitting Podcast and this is episode 48. I'm coming to you from a very grey and dreary January day here in the southeast of the UK. It's really wet and cold, and what better to do than sit down and chat about some knitting. So I hope you've all had a wonderful week, and yeah, let's get into it. So I've got one finished object and 3 whips to talk about today. Technically 4 whips, but one of them I haven't worked on, but I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. So first of all, finished objects. I have one finished object today. It's my first finished object of 2025 and it is my daughter's Musselburgh Hat. So this is a pattern by YSOLDA TEAGUE. I knit this up in Cheshire Yarns Peruvian Highland Wool 4-ply in the colour Superstar. It's a 100% non-superwash Peruvian Highland Wool. It's fingering weight yarn, and yeah, it was a beautiful yarn to work with. It was really, really soft. It didn't end up being splitty at all like I thought it would last week, and it was just a really nice yarn to work up. It was very, very bouncy, very sort of full, very easy to knit with. So yeah, it was a lovely knitting experience. I used a 3.25mm needle and I got 6.5 stitches per inch, and this is the adult small / child size, and this is obviously for my 4-year-old. So this was to replace the hat that she lost. I've been through this a couple of times, but unfortunately she lost a hat that was almost identical to this at school, so this is just a direct replacement. But I think the last one that I knit was in a superwash base and this one is in a non-superwash, so this should kind of keep her a little bit warmer and be a little bit more kind of water resistant, especially in the weather that we're having now. It's very kind of wet and sort of, it's like wet in the air, and so you know sometimes that can kind of cling to the hat and make it all wet, and then this probably won't suffer from that because it is a non-superwash base. Both me and my husband have non-superwash Musselburghs and we don't find that they kind of get all soggy, but hers used to, and so yes, hopefully this won't end up like that. So last week when I was talking about this, I mentioned that I had forgotten to put in an increase, and I was in 2 minds about whether or not I wanted to pull this back or carry on knitting, and I kind of convinced myself whilst filming that I was going to pull it back to the increases, which are up here. This is the inside of the hat. I've sewn the crowns together on this one so that it's a little bit easier for her to put on when she's at school. But yes, so I had forgotten to do an increase right all the way up here at the top, and I had gotten down to about there, and like I say, talked myself into the fact that I was going to have to pull it back. So I did. I pulled it all the way back up to the increases, and I added in that last increase, which is here. Is it there? Yeah, here. So I added that in and then I carried on knitting. But to be honest, it was the last increase, and so after that it was just a lot of stockinette, which was quite quick to kind of get back to where I was. Because it was so cold last week, we had a lot of I think we were in minus numbers for like a good week or so, and so it was kind of one of those things that I was thinking I really need to get this done so that she can wear it. So it became like my main work in progress for the week, and hence why I managed to get it finished. Now unfortunately I finished this just as it started to warm up again, but it's still cold enough that you need a hat really, so I don't think that this is going to kind of go to waste. And also we're only in the beginning of January, so I'm pretty sure that she's going to get some wear out of it throughout the rest of the kind of colder months, and especially as we get into spring when it's quite windy, she'll need something to cover her ears. Like I said, she lost the last one, so I have added in a label to this one. I got these off Etsy. I think they're really cute. And then they do say this is the back, but obviously that's not really all that relevant for a hat. So I can pop her name on the label, and hopefully if it does get misplaced at school it can then make its way back to us because they will know who it belongs to. So I obviously knit all of the inside and then all of the outside and the decreases at the top of the hat, which just look like this. For once, I think it actually ended up, sorry, the colours are getting completely blown out by the window over there. But I think for once it kind of ended up that my increases and decreases were almost identical, and I usually put my decreases on the outside because they look neater, but for this one it ended up that they kind of look the same, so I've just shoved the decreases on the outside because it was just the way it ended up when I folded it. The full length of this hat is 20, well, before blocking it was 20 inches between the end of the increases and the beginning of the decreases, and then I lost an inch in blocking, so it's about 19 inches of stockinette between the increases and decreases. So this is fairly long, which should give her a good amount of longevity in it. Hopefully she won't grow out of this. I mean, if she does, then her head is getting enormous because this fits me. But I have quite a small head. I also have the adult small size in mine, but this is around about the same size as mine. I like to knit her hats to be a little bit wider and taller because she has her hair up to go into school, and so I like to be able to like then pull the hat all the way over whatever hairstyle she's got and still cover her ears. And if she's got like a big ponytail on the top of her head, then she needs a little bit more fabric there. So this should hopefully accommodate for that. But yeah, overall very, very happy with how this turned out. I used 95 grams of my 100 gram skein, which works out about 332.5 meters of yarn to knit this, and it was just a joy to knit. I just love a bit of stockinette. I love a Musselburgh hat. They're so good to just have as a like easygoing whip, and they are so useful. Like, we all have a Musselburgh now, we all wear them as like our daily hats in the winter, and I just love this pattern, to be honest. It's my go-to when anyone needs a hat. It's so effective, and I love the fact that you can just cast on, measure your gauge and get going. So I cast this on January the 3rd, and I cast it off on January the 12th. So all in all, this took me a grand total of 10 days to knit. And cost-wise, the pattern costs £6, the skein of yarn cost me £17.50, and the pack of labels cost £6.87. So all in all for this project, it was a total of £30.37. However, I've obviously used the pattern quite a lot, so we can kind of take some off for that for my total, and the labels I will use in other projects as well. So yeah, fairly expensive for a hat, but to be honest, she'll wear this every day, so it's not too much of an issue, and I'd rather she had one that kept her warm and dry. So that was my finished object for this week, and now it's time to get into some whips. So first up, the whip that I didn't work on this week was my northeasterly blanket, which I am using my 2024 Daily Advent from Skein in the Stitch. I just didn't have the motivation to work on it this week. I just was distracted by other things, and so it will come back next week, but I just didn't pick it up this week. So I don't have it here to show because it is downstairs. So the first whip that I have to show you that I did actually work on this week is my vanilla socks. So I am just working up a pair of vanilla socks. I'm not using a pattern, I'm just working off of my own kind of numbers for a vanilla sock. And I'm using Giddy Yarn's BFL sock in the colour. If I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. And this was her week 2 colourway from her weekly sock set advent from 2024. So last week I was here, and obviously this week I have finished sock 1. So I did the last 44 rounds of the foot, and then before I started the toe, I got to 40 rounds, I think it was. So I got to about 8 rounds before I needed to add in the toe, and then I added in 4 rounds of contrast colour to just add in a stripe to kind of match the ones that I did on the rib. And then I did 4 rounds again of the main colour, and then I just added in the toe in the contrast, just to make them a little bit more interesting, jazz them up a little bit, since they were just a vanilla sock. And I'm very much looking forward to having these in my sock drawer. I think I've said before, I don't wear commercial socks anymore, I only wear my hand knit socks, and I tend to reach for my vanilla socks a little bit more often than my pattern socks, or, well, My vanilla socks and my rib socks are probably my most worn socks. So yes, I'm very much looking forward to having these to wear. But yes, this week I finished up sock 1 and I have also cast on sock 2. So I have just done the first 8 rounds of the rib, and I'm doing a 2x1 rib, and I did 8 rounds of main colour, and then 4 rounds of contrast, 4 rounds of main, 4 rounds of contrast, 6 rounds of main, and then went into the main body of the sock. And I am using a 2mm needle for my ribbing, just so that it sort of cinches in a little bit more. Otherwise I find that my ribbing ends up being quite loose and it kind of bulges out at the top of the sock. So I much prefer to knit my ribbing on a 2mm and then go up to a 2.25 for the main body of the sock. And I also prefer to knit my ribbing on magic loop instead of small circular. I just find it more comfortable. I think it's changing between knits and purls on a small circular. I don't really enjoy it very much, so I much prefer doing it on magic loop, and then I will change over to my small circulars for the main body of the sock because I find it more comfortable to knit stockinette on small circulars. So that is where I am with these. I've just kind of been knitting on them as and when I can, to be honest. They're really great for knitting on when I'm editing, so I'm sure these will get some work on them today whilst I'm editing the podcast, and tomorrow whilst I'm finishing up editing my What I Knit in 2024 video, which should be up on Friday for you guys to watch. It's quite long, so I would grab a hot drink, grab some snacks, grab your knitting, because that one is it's quite a lengthy video. I'm about 2/3 of the way through editing it at the moment, and it's quite long. So yeah, these will definitely get some work whilst I'm editing over the next couple of days. So I cast these on December the 24th. They were my Christmas Eve cast on, and so they have currently been on my needles for 23 days. So yes, very much enjoying knitting these. I will move my marker over as well. Now that I have shown you where I was and where I am now. So let's pop this on here. There we go. So there's my little spaceman, and we will see how far we get this week. Okay, so the next whip that I wanted to talk about was my self-drafted cable knit cardigan, and before I get into it I just wanted to say a massive thank you to anybody who has emailed me, commented, messaged me to say that they want to test knit the pattern, that they love the design, to offer to help tech edit the pattern. I've just been so overwhelmed with how positive the response has been. It's really blown me away. It's just amazing to see, and I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everybody, and it's really kind of like chivied me along to get some extra work done on this week, hence why my blanket didn't get any work done, because I was so busy working on this. So I'm knitting this up in Gepard Woolia in the colour Olive, and I'm using a 4.5mm needle, and I'm knitting up what will be size 1, so it will be made to fit it's designed to fit a 75cm chest with positive ease. So I, this week, have finished up all the cabling on the body. This is ever so slightly damp. I've just pulled it off of the blocking mats because I decided I was going to wash and block it just to double check all of my measurements and everything, make sure that my gauge hadn't changed as I was knitting a lot more of an expanse of fabric, and yeah, just to open up the cables a little bit more. So last week I was here, and I've knit all the way down to the end of the cabling on the body, and I'm very much happy with the length of this now, and I think it is ready for ribbing. I've not decided what ribbing I want to add on to this at the moment. The original jumper that I knit has got a 1x1 rib, but I'm just feeling like this kind of, I'm not sure if I want to add a 2x2 onto this one. I've not decided yet. But I'm also well aware of the fact that I ordered this yarn with the idea that I would probably end up knitting like a stockinette jumper in this. But obviously I'm now knitting an all-over cabled cardigan, so I'm pretty sure that I'm going to run out of yarn and I will need to order more. So my plan at the moment is to do the calculations and everything that I need to do to be able to work out my pickup rate and everything for the sleeves, and add on the sleeves before I then go in and do all of the ribbing. Because from experience of working with multiple dye lots and things, I ordered this yarn quite a while ago. I think it was at the beginning of last year, so I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't get the same dye lot. I'm not sure what Gepard are like with their dye lots as to whether or not they are very consistent or not, but if I was going to use a different dye lot, I would rather that just be on all of the ribbing instead of like being one sleeve that's a slightly different colour, or like half of a sleeve that's a slightly different colour. So I thought if I get the sleeves on, then I can kind of assess how much yarn I've got left and then kind of go from there, really. But this is the back. Now, I didn't realise until I started editing last week that the cables on the back of this pattern are going the wrong way. So on the fronts, they all point towards the main sort of panel of cables in the middle, sort of like this. And then on the back, they point away from the main panel of cables in the middle. And that was not intentional. I had intended to make them all point towards the cable, the main panel, so that it was sort of kind of drawing the attention towards the main panel of cables, because, you know, I want to show them off. I love them. So it's something that I will be amending in the charts for the pattern, and when I come to knit my second sample, I will obviously knit them the right way. But at this point, I didn't realise it until I had already got halfway down the body, and I was sort of like, I don't know if I want to pull this back. I'm so happy with how it's going, and I'm just not really up for it. So I thought, since this is just for me and it was more so that I could work out if all of my measurements and everything were correct, I'm going to leave it on this one. And I always wanted to knit myself up a second sample anyway, so I will amend it on that one. But yeah, that is something that I will fix in the pattern. But yeah, it's just, I just absolutely love this. I can't wait to be able to wear it. I'm just so happy with it. I'm so proud of the fact that I have managed to make this. Yeah, I'm just so happy with it. But yes, that is my self-drafted cabled cardigan so far, and I cast this on December the 26th, and so it's currently been on my needles for 21 days. So my last whip that I have to talk about today is a new cast on, and it's for my daughter, and this is the Effervescent Mini by SHER. And I am using Woolly Knit Super Soft Merino 4-ply in the colour Rose. It just looks like this. So you might recognise this yarn as the one that I used for my daughter's festival dress last year. You can only buy this in packs of 10, so I had quite a lot left over, and so I've decided to use it up in a jumper for her. She really likes this colour, she really likes the yarn, she hasn't got any issues with it. It's a super wash 4-ply merino, and so yeah, I thought it was going to work perfectly for this pattern. So I'm using a 3mm and a 3.25mm needle to knit this, which is 2 sizes down from the pattern. It turns out that I'm just quite a loose knitter now, which I'm slowly getting used to. I'm used to being quite a tight knitter, but I seem to have loosened up ever so slightly. And I am knitting the age 5, which is the 4th size in the pattern. Now, this was part of my autumn knitting plans. I did not manage to accomplish all of my autumn knitting plans in the autumn, and so instead of doing a winter knitting plans video and sort of adding in more patterns that I want to knit and everything, I am just going to continue knitting my autumn knitting plans and then kind of assess them when we get to spring, and then I'll probably do a spring knitting plans. I just don't see the point in putting more pressure on myself with more and more things to knit when I really do want to get all of the things off of my autumn knitting plans actually finished. And so yeah, I'm just going to skip out the winter knitting plans, carry on knitting through my autumn ones, and then come back to it in the spring. So yeah, there's no point in rehashing all of the things that I said in my autumn knitting plans anyway in a winter knitting plans video. It just wouldn't be very interesting for me to film or you to watch. So yes, I am now finally getting to this pattern on my knitting plans. So it's a bottom-up construction, and in the pattern AIMEE has you start with a long tail cast on, and I have subbed in a tubular cast on just because of personal preference. I really like doing a tubular cast on. I find it quite meditative to do and not too difficult, and I feel like it gives me a really nice stretchy edge, especially since this is now the bottom rib of the jumper and I didn't want it to be too tight. So I think that's going to work out really nicely. And then I've just been knitting the 1x1 half twisted rib for the bottom of the body, and I've got about 2 rounds left before I can go into the main stockinette for the rest of the body of this jumper. I have said before how much I don't like knitting half twisted rib, but actually I feel like I've really kind of found a flow with knitting it in this pattern. I've not found it anywhere near as tedious as I have done in the past, and maybe that is because I've done it more now and I've kind of got my rhythm with it and am kind of getting used to the sort of way of knitting it. But it also might be a combination of the yarn and the gauge and everything. It's just a little bit more comfortable for me. I found that half twisted rib can sometimes be quite uncomfortable to knit, and I'm not finding that in this pattern, which is quite nice. So yeah, I haven't hated knitting it in this, and I do think it just looks absolutely beautiful. I've always said I love the look of half twisted rib, I just don't enjoy knitting it, but it's quite nice for it to be slightly more enjoyable this time round. So yeah, that is where I am with this, and hopefully it will look a little bit more interesting next week. I quite like the fact that with this pattern you start with the body instead of the sleeves, so you get kind of like the main bulk of your knitting done, and then you do something slightly smaller, you knit the sleeves, and then you join it all together for the yoke. So yeah, that's quite nice. But as for now, it's just going to be 2 more rounds, I think, of the half twisted rib, and then quite a lot of stockinette. So it's going to be quite a nice sort of easy breezy knit for now until I get into the lace yoke, which is something that I'm very much looking forward to. I have decided that I will be adding the ruffle, and I'll be doing it in mohair because it won't actually touch my daughter's skin, so hopefully she won't find it at all irritating, but she does like the look of it. She likes how sort of fuzzy and everything it is. So I'll be adding in the ruffle to this pattern as well, and I'm going to be using this mohair. I think this is Philcolana Tilia in the colour Peach Blossom. And so I think she will absolutely love it. She's got a December bow that I knit up last year using this mohair, so that will match and she'll be able to wear them together and be all matchy-matchy. So yes, very much enjoying this so far and looking forward to getting into the main body of it this week. So yes, I cast that on yesterday, so that has been on my needles for 1 day. And that is it for all of my whips this week. I'd love to know what you guys are knitting. Did you accomplish your autumn knitting plans if you had them, or are you still now knitting them into winter like I am? Remember to look out for my all the garments that I knit in 2024 video. That will be coming on Friday. But as for now, I hope you all have wonderful weeks going forward, and I will catch up with you all next week with some more knitting. Happy making!